Representative Gregory Meeks, Democrat from New York, just did something that should make every American question the economic credibility of the Trump administration. He asked Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent a simple question. Does a trade deficit constitute a national emergency? Bessent said yes. Persistent and prolonged trade deficits, he said, do constitute a national emergency.
The hollowing out of the U.S. manufacturing
No, just yes or no.
class.
Yes or no? Yes or no,
It's a
sir?
national emergency, sir.
It does. It does. You're telling me trade deficits equals a national or creates
Persistent and prolonged.
Meeks pointed out that the United States has had trade deficits for 4 decades. Democratic and Republican presidents, nobody called it an emergency, nobody invoked emergency powers. Meeks said that tells him one thing: it is not an emergency. It tells him that Congress should bring tariffs back under its own authority, as the Constitution requires, and stop the executive branch from going around Congress.
It says to me that we should bring tariffs back to the United States Congress so that we can make that determination as the Constitution has said and not try to go around Congress.
Then Meeks pivoted to something even more confounding. He asked Bessent who the president was on January 20th, 2025. Bessent said Donald J. Trump. Meeks asked who the president was in 2024. Bessent said Joe Biden. Meeks noted that President Trump recently credited himself for the strong economy in 2024 when Biden was president, but blamed Biden for the weak economy in 2025 when Trump was president. Meeks said it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to him. It doesn't make sense to most Americans. And he hoped that Bessent, as a businessman, would agree that it doesn't make sense. But Bessent did not disagree. He did not explain. He sat silent. Then Meeks dropped the hammer. Donald Trump, the deal maker, has declared bankruptcy 6 times, failed to pay his debts, and Bessent is supposed to be the steward of the nation's fiscal health. Meeks said he wouldn't invest in that company. Let's watch. I'll break it down.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bessent, I'm just a plain, simple man, the average, everyday American is looking at this hearing today. So can you tell me first, does trade deficits constitute a national emergency?
The hollowing out of the U.S. manufacturing
No, just yes or no.
class.
Yes or no? Yes or no,
It's a
sir?
national emergency, sir.
It does. It does. You're telling me trade deficits equals a national or creates
Persistent and prolonged.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And do you know also, sir, that for the last 4 decades, we've had trade deficits in the United States of America, and nobody said it was an emergency? Democratic and Republican presidents? You know what that says to me? That it's not an emergency because it hasn't been for 4 decades. It says to me that we should bring tariffs back to the United States Congress so that we can make that determination as the Constitution has said and not try to go around Congress. That's just unbelievable to me. Let me ask this question. Maybe they missed it. Who was the president and who has been the president since January 20th, 2025?
Donald J. Trump.
Okay. And who was the president in 2024?
One believes President Biden.
One believes? You one of those non-believers that the election, the American people didn't vote?
I am not.
You're not? You said one believes? Do you believe in the Constitution of the United States and it should be abided by?
I believe in the Constitution of the United States.
So you believe in it without any second thought. You don't have to think about it. You believe in it and you would abide by it. Is that correct?
I have and I do, sir.
Okay. Well, do you know that a president has said he may or may not? He don't know? Let me ask this question. I couldn't believe my ears. Sunday, during NBC's Meet the Press, President Trump credited himself for the strong economy in 2024 when Joe Biden was president, but then he blamed President Biden for a weak economy in 2025 when he was president. Now, I'm not so sure how the American people puts that together. In 2024, strong economy, he tries to take the credit. In 2025, when he's the president, he blames Joe Biden. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't think it makes sense to most Americans. And I hope, Mr. Secretary, you're a businessman, it doesn't make sense to you either. It can't possibly make sense to you. Let me ask this question. If a government, say, look, Argentina, I remember when I came here, and Argentina kept failing to pay its debt. Not once or twice or three times. And we were all upset about it, and we said that they needed somebody needed to take over their government. You know, somebody should help the president of Argentina. If the United States didn't pay his debt or something like that, we'd be very upset about that if we couldn't pay our debt. I mean, that's one of our focuses. Is that not correct?
Sir, the United States will always meet its debt obligations.
Always. Well, let me ask you this. Donald Trump, the deal maker, and you didn't answer Ms. Velasquez's questions, no deals, although he said 3 weeks ago that there would be deals. But Donald Trump, not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, not 5 times, but 6 times failed to pay his debts on his business and went bankrupt. And you're going to call that a good businessman?
The gentleman's
I wouldn't
time
invest
has
in that
expired.
company.
There is a reason Representative Gregory Meeks is one of the most respected members of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and this 5-minute exchange is a masterclass in why. He did not shout. He did not interrupt. He laid out, with plain-spoken clarity, a series of contradictions that should undermine the entire economic argument of the Trump administration. He started with trade deficits. Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, testified that persistent and prolonged trade deficits constitute a national emergency. Meeks pointed out that the United States has had trade deficits for 4 decades. Democratic presidents, Republican presidents. No one called it an emergency. No one invoked emergency powers. Meeks's conclusion is devastating. If something has been happening for 40 years without being declared an emergency, it is not an emergency. It is the status quo. The real issue, Meeks said, is that the administration is trying to go around Congress. The Constitution gives Congress the power to set tariffs. The executive branch is supposed to execute the laws, not invent emergencies to bypass the legislature. Meeks said that is just unbelievable. Then Meeks turned to something even more confounding. He asked Bessent who the president was on January 20th, 2025. Bessent said Donald J. Trump. He asked who the president was in 2024. Bessent said Joe Biden. Meeks noted that on Meet the Press, President Trump credited himself for the strong economy in 2024, when Joe Biden was president. But then he blamed President Biden for the weak economy in 2025, when he was president. Meeks said he couldn't believe his ears. In 2024, strong economy, Trump takes the credit. In 2025, weak economy, he blames Biden. It doesn't make sense. It can't possibly make sense to any American. Meeks asked Bessent, as a businessman, to agree that it doesn't make sense. Bessent did not agree. He did not disagree. He sat silent. Because there is no way to make sense of it. The only consistent principle is that Trump takes credit for anything good and blames anyone else for anything bad. That is not economic policy. That is political survival. Then Meeks turned to debt. He asked Bessent about Argentina, which has repeatedly failed to pay its debts. He noted that the United States would be outraged if another country did that. Bessent said the United States will always meet its debt obligations. Always. Meeks then asked about Donald Trump, the dealmaker, the businessman who promised deals. Meeks noted that Trump has declared bankruptcy 6 times. 6 times. Failed to pay his debts, not once, not twice, 6 times. And Bessent is supposed to be the steward of the nation's fiscal health. Meeks said he wouldn't invest in that company. It is a devastating line because it goes to the heart of the administration's credibility. Trump has spent his entire career selling himself as a master businessman, a deal maker, someone who knows how to handle money. But the record shows that his businesses have failed repeatedly. He has left creditors unpaid. He has used bankruptcy as a business strategy. And now he is applying the same principles to the United States government. Run up the debt, cut taxes, ignore the deficit, declare emergencies to bypass Congress, blame the previous administration for any problems, claim credit for any successes. It is not a strategy. It is a grift. Meeks did not need to say any of that. He did not need to accuse Bessent of lying. He did not need to raise his voice. He simply laid out the contradictions and let them speak for themselves. Trade deficits have existed for 40 years. They are not an emergency. Trump takes credit for Biden's economy and blames Biden for his own. That makes no sense. Trump has declared bankruptcy 6 times. That is not good business. And the Treasury Secretary, the man responsible for the nation's fiscal health, sat there and took it. He did not defend, he did not explain, he did not even try. Because there is no defense, there is no explanation. There is only the cold reality that the man who wants to run the country's economy has spent his career running his own businesses into the ground. Meeks yielded back. The hearing moved on, but his words linger. The American people are watching, they are listening, and they are wondering, why is this administration declaring emergencies that don't exist, taking credit they don't deserve, and blaming others for problems they created? Meeks gave them the answer. Because that is what Donald Trump has always done, and Scott Bessent, for all his credentials, cannot say otherwise.